What is the first color you think of when you think of spring? Tell me in the comments below. For me, it is yellow, and today I want to show you how to make some daffodils, which I think are like the pinnacle of spring flowers. Let's go. I'll be using two yellow colors here. The first is lemon yellow and the second is egg yellow. So the egg yellow is much warmer and we're going to be using that for the center portion of our daffodils. This gum paste I've already colored in advance with that egg yellow color. And then I also have a piece of the lemon yellow color here, which is a much cooler yellow. And you can see the difference there between the two. So that cooler yellow we'll be using on the outside. I have a piece of 20 gauge wire here, and I'm just going to be making kind of like a little notch in it. You'll see what I mean. So I'm just bending the wire back and forth just to kind of make a little kink in the wire. And that's just going to help our daffodil center stick on the wire and not fall down. So again, just bending it back so that the wire looks straight, but there is that little notch in it. And that looks perfect. I'm taking a small piece of the egg yellow gum paste and just rolling that into a tiny ball. This is going to be our center, and we're also going to add some stamens once this has had a chance to dry overnight. Take a small amount of your gum glue and just paint it on the end of that wire, and then insert that tiny ball of gum paste that we have onto it and just secure it by kind of pinching at the base. I ended up using these micro stamen heads, but I would actually recommend that you go for a larger stamen like a lily or even a hammerhead type of stamen because they're a little bit more realistic. But this was all I had at the time. Tape some floral tape around your stem, and I actually would recommend using white instead of green. I regretted this later, so live and learn. And you're gonna start wrapping around to secure your stamens onto the base. And do make sure that your center is totally dry before you try and do this, otherwise it's just gonna fall right off. So you'll need to dry it for at least overnight to 24 hours or so. And once those stamens are secure, you can begin taping around the wire until you get just past the notched area. We're going to start by making our daffodil centers. So we start with that egg yellow color, the warmer yellow, and I have just maybe a grape-sized amount here. I'll give that a quick roll and run it through the pasta machine just to number 1, just to make sure that it's nice and even. I've passed it through the machine now, and we're just going to cut it into a rough rectangle size. You can kind of do whatever you want here. It's not a prescribed size as there are so many different sizes of daffodils. So just cut a rough rectangle and you'll be totally good to go. Grab your large ball tool and begin thinning out one of the longer edges of your rectangle. Just for a size reference, I have 2 dahlia cutters that are consecutive sizes. So this is the smaller one and it is the same length as the short side of this rectangle. And then we're going to be using the next size up in order to cut our outer petals of the daffodil. So I smoothed out the one longer side, then I thinned out the edges as well. And now I'm using my veining tool to just go right across the entire petal. So you can see that this petal is kind of flared at the base now, and that's going to be the outer part of our daffodil center. So flip that over now, and we're going to do the same thing here. This is easier if you do it at the edge of your table, just so you can get a bit more leverage on the veiner. So just working that back and forth, and then I go back on a few different spots to create an even thinner area. Flip that over, and this is going to be the inside of our petal, and put just a thin layer of glue on one edge. I'm wiping off the excess because I don't want it to be slippery. And then I'm just going to close that into a loop. And it doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to go over it again with the veining tool to close that edge right up. So take the veining tool and just roll it back and forth. Put a bit of shortening on your tool if you find it sticking at all. So we have our cylindrical center for the daffodil. The next step will be to further thin out the edge. I have my small ball tool here, and I'm putting pressure on that outer edge in order to thin it out and also give it a ruffle. It's looking much more delicate already, but next we will grab our Dresden tool and almost give it a few more veining areas, just so it's not so even looking all the way around. And then I'm just doing a few more little spots where I want a bit of extra ruffling. You want that outer edge to have a lot of beautiful texture, and this is looking great. So next, you're gonna grab your center and add some glue on the notched area as well as just below it, because that's where our center is going to sit. Thread that wire through, and then what you're going to do is kind of balance the wire upright, and you're going to pinch around it right on that notched area so that the base of your large daffodil center petal is secured. And once it is attached, you can go around and start smoothing that out on the outside, as well as grabbing your small ball tool in a second. I'll show you how to smooth out the inside a bit, but you want it to look as even as possible. Just press that down gently. And mine wasn't sticking quite enough, so I add just a touch more gum glue down the wire and roll that so it is definitely secure, because this is what we're going to build the rest of our flower upon. Once it's nice and secure, you can grab a small pair of scissors and trim right around the base if you think that there's a bit too much gum paste there. You do need a little bit worked up the wire, but you don't need a ton. I'll show you exactly what it looks like in just a second. So that is nice and centered. We're going to leave this upside down overnight in order to dry. And then tomorrow we can add on our petals. This is the dahlia cutter size that we're going to be using in order to cut out our petals, and you can see it's exactly the same length now as our completed center. The pointy part is going to go towards the flower. So you'll need your veining tool, Dresden tool, and large ball tool, as well as a piece of bumpy foam or even just a piece of tin foil that you can kind of form in order to make a cup shape. So give your lemon yellow paste a knead, and then you can roll it out on your mat and then roll through the pasta machine to a number 3. Next, you'll cut out 6 petals for each of the flowers that you're going to create. And make sure to give that a nice wiggle on your mat to make sure that the cuts are clean. Then place all of your petals under a double piece of plastic wrap with a damp towel over top as you work. So start out with your large ball tool, just thinning out the petal edges as much as you can, leaving the bottom untouched. And I'm also smoothing out the petal as well so that there's no markings from the ball tool on it. Next, bring that to the edge of your mat and grab your veining tool and vein it all the way across. So I'm starting from the center and then just going to the left side first and then the right side afterwards. Flip it over and grab your Dresden tool. You're going to make 2 markings just outside the center line of your petal. And then you're going to do the 2 top edges once you've flipped it over, and then once right down the middle. Then allow this to dry on your bumpy foam with one of the bumps supporting the back of your petal, and then the base of your petal is going to be pointed downwards in one of the valleys of the bumpy foam. So I'm gonna batch 3 right now and just show you once more exactly how to do it. So you start by thinning out those edges with the largest ball tool and smoothing them out as well. Bring them to the edge of your mat and do your veining back and forth on each petal. Flip them all over and grab your Dresden tool. Make those 2 lines on just the outside edge of the center line. Then flip them all over again. Do the top 2 edges just partway down, and then 1 line right down the center of each. Now we will shape all of those onto our bumpy foam, having that base facing downwards and the back of the petal being supported by one of the bumps. You can also pinch the top edge just to give it a little bit more shape and texture. And since we're just par drying these petals, they should be still fairly malleable, so you can always reshape that base if you don't find it is in the right angle. You'll kind of get the hang of it as you go. Here's our completed center. It's really nice and dry. I've left it for 24 hours upside down. And we'll be painting some glue onto the bottom area of it. So that entire area that we smoothed down, that will get the glue, and all of my petals are now firm enough that they can hold their shape, but not so firm that if I try and attach it, they're gonna start cracking. And I might put a tiny bit of extra glue, just a super thin layer, onto the petals as well. So those 3 that I just put glue on are going to be the 3 exterior petals. They have a little bit more glue, and then these 3 on the right hand side are the 3 interior petals, and they don't need quite as much because they're going to be attached to the areas that we just put glue on the centerpiece. So line that up with the pointy end facing the flower and give that a really good press so that it's not going anywhere. If you find it's sticky on your fingers, just put a tiny bit of shortening and that should take care of it. So try and place these as evenly around as possible, so you have 3 evenly spaced petals facing away from your center. And since these are going to be the base on which the next petals will go on, you really want to make sure they're nice and secure, so just give them an extra press and make sure they're evenly spaced as well. So you can grab your next petal and you'll just place it right in between 2 of the previous petals that we added. Make sure it's as evenly spaced as well as possible, and just make your way around exactly the same way as before. So all these petals should be holding their shape well at this point. You don't want them to be flopping down, otherwise you're just gonna have such a headache trying to get them to all stick and stay in the right shape. So if they are starting to flop down, leave them to par dry just for a little bit longer, and then you can move on to this step. Gently holding my petals, I'll flip it over to make sure that I like all of the placement. Just make any adjustments, and we're going to insert that into the concave area of the bumpy foam, or you could just make like a little cup with a piece of tin foil, and that will work exactly the same way. So I'm trying to hold up the petals as best I can. It's easier, obviously, if your bumpy foam is sitting on top of something like a drying rack, but this is just so you can see what it looks like. And just make any adjustments you need at this point. Make sure your petals are all in a place that you like, because we are going to leave that to dry overnight before we get to dusting. Here are a couple of my dried daffodils. I made 3 in total for this. So now we can get to dusting. I have a bit of vibrant yellow that I'm using here. And this yellow, I would say, is a little bit on the warm side, but if you don't have a yellow that's this warm, you can always add just a touch of orange to it. And I'm mixing that with the cornstarch, as I always do, to dilute the color so it's easier to apply. With my small flat brush here, I'm going to begin at the tip and also adding a lot of color to the base as well. I am adding quite a bit of color just over this entire petal to give it that really bright, vibrant yellow color. And I'm right now focusing my color at the base where you can see a lot of shadow. So we want to accentuate that with the dust. Also begin working up all of your petals. I'm focusing a lot of the dust on the center and the edges as well, just trying to catch as much as I can just to bring this flower really to life with that vibrant yellow. Flip your flower over and then you'll be able to dust at the base, kind of moving outwards towards the edges of the petals. And because we rolled these petals to a number 3, they should be fairly sturdy. You shouldn't really have any breakage, especially if you're using my gum paste recipe. I didn't have any breakage the entire time I was making these daffodils. So again, I'm focusing that color on the tips and the edges and then the middle veining area as well. I'm pretty happy with this yellow, so now we can move on to the trumpet part of the daffodil, which is a slightly warmer yellow, almost a little bit orangey. So I'm taking a bit of my bright orange dust here aside and I'll mix it in with some of the yellow dust as well as the cornstarch to dilute it and make it apply more smoothly. I'll use the same flat brush here and just kind of pull the color in on the very edge of the trumpet shape. Just catching as much of that orange dust as you can. And this is just like the first layer of dust. We're also going to add some more afterwards to really bring it out and really bring it to life. I'm doing the same thing on the outer edges here, just pulling down that orange color from the very top. And I am using quite a bit of dust here, but since it's mixed with the cornstarch, I don't have to worry about it being streaky or anything like that. So we brought out the shadows a little bit before with the yellow dust, but now we're accentuating it even more with the orange dust. So just work your brush right on the crevice between the petals and the trumpet area. Now I'm going to add a little bit more dust on the tips. This is an area that would have a little bit more shadow, so we can always add a slightly darker color to bring that out. I'm using an orange here that is like a reddish orange, like it's a very, very vibrant orange, teetering on the side of red, and I'm going to use that to really bring out those edges of the trumpet. You can absolutely use a different orange and then mix it with a bit of red, or whatever you have, it will do just fine. So once I'm happy with all of the shadowy areas that I've been able to add here, I'm also going to add some more to the outside. Being slightly more sparse with this one, really focusing it on the top edge as opposed to going all the way down the trumpet as we did with the last shade of orange. So in order to give this trumpet depth, I want to add some of that bright orange right to the base of it. You could even make this area a little bit more saturated or a little bit darker if you had a slightly darker orange, or even adding a bit of red to it would look really nice. It just gives you that illusion of the depth that sometimes sugar flowers can lack. We're done with all the yellows and oranges, but we are going to add just a few accents to bring this flower to life. I'm mixing up some greens here, so this is moss green, leaf green, and caramel as well. And this is just to go at the very base. to blend the stem area into the flower. If you look at daffodils, you could absolutely make this more complicated, making a thicker stem, and they also have this kind of crepe looking brownish, I don't even know what you call it. It's similar to calyx at the base, so you could definitely add that if you wanted to go for the fully real look, but we're not going to see the backs of these, so let's just keep it simple. I added a bit more of that darker dust and the caramel dust to really bring this color to a deeper saturation. And now I'm working the color up these petals a tiny bit, just onto the outer edges. And we're also going to hit a couple spots on the trumpet and on the petals at the front as well with that green, because I always like adding a touch of green. It really brings any flower to life. I am just simply taping up the stems of these daffodils with some light green tape, and these I'm actually going to use on a video in just a couple of weeks, so make sure you're subscribed. I'm going to show you how I design and arrange all of the flowers onto this cake that you're seeing on the screen right now. So subscribe so you don't miss out on that, and maybe share this video with a friend who you think would enjoy it. Before you leave and hopefully click onto another one of my videos, you can find all of the ingredients, tools, and equipment that I used for this entire video in the description box below. And I will see you next time. Happy sugar flowering!